feel free to, in the chat, ask questions. I'm also learning how to use live when it's live, so don't get all pissy on me if I mess something up. So I'm just here to park right next to my apartment on this travel assignment gig with Jesse in Sacramento. So I couldn't say the name of this park, but it's mine because it's in my neighborhood and I love it. So on YouTube in the poll for going live on Sunday, the most requested topic was the shoulder. So that's what we're gonna do, is the shoulder. And the first place to start for any part of the body you're working on is you have to know jamming. Jammn, jamming. Joint, articulation, motion, muscle, nerve. Absolutely have to know that. Not even worrying about origin and insertion. You can add those in with my jam and IO concept, but you gotta at least know jamming. And that's what we're gonna cover. And if I feel like going off on a tangent, we'll some other stuff. So if you're following along or watching this later, you should get out a sheet of paper and you should be copying down what I say, or at least listening to it as like a podcast over and over and over again. If you're writing it, write it over and over again. What I'm about to do is what you should be able to do. I have no notes around me, nothing. Got me, got an energy drink, I got a park, and I got what I've uploaded in my brain after years of work. I know you don't have years, but you can work. So, jamming, joint, glenohumeral joint. Boom. This guy. So what articulates to make the glenohumeral joint? We need two bones. It's going to be the glenoid fossa of the scapula and the head of the humerus. That is the glenohumeral joint. Now there are other joints involved in terms of the shoulder girdle, but we're specifically just talking about the glenohumeral joint. So we got joint and articulation. Now we need a motion. So flexion. Boom. Flexion of the glenohumeral joint. I'm just going to probably say shoulder from here on out because I want to. But so motion, flexion. So what muscles flex the shoulder? And if I can, I'll immediately go into the nerve. So number one, anterior delt, axillary. Number two, coracobrachialis, which is going to be the musculocutaneous nerve. Then you're going to have the biceps brachii, short and long head, and it's going to be the musculocutaneous nerve as well. So those are three shoulder flexors, primary shoulder flexors. Now, some people are going to say pec major, for example, and it's not wrong, but I've never seen that as something on the test. The pec major is going to help with flexing the shoulder more in like from a neutral position bench press or especially even extended, but it's not helping me get my arm up here really. Not compared to the other ones. You're not going to see that on a test. Lag. Well, maybe it is lagging because it's the world, baby. So, let's see. We just did shoulder flexion. I did motion, muscle, nerve. Let's do shoulder abduction. Moving in the frontal plane, our motion abduction. Yeah, it might be my device. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. So, you know, hey, send me some super thanks. Give me some money so I can buy a new phone. You know what I mean? Then I can stream with no lag. Boom, I'll take it. So, shoulder abduction. You should be thinking about what's going to be a muscle that abducts the shoulder. Well, middle delt. That's going to be one, axillary nerve. But a really good one to know because it's part of the rotator cuff. Yeah, send it, baby. Let's do it. Part of the rotator cuff is the supraspinatus. So, and that's going to run right across the top. It's very important that you know that one. It's a test question on a lot of things. It's one of the most torn muscles of the rotator cuff. And it's a major abductor, but it also helps depress the head of the humerus into the glenoid fossa, helping support that. That's why it's part of the rotator cuff. And its nerve is the suprascapular nerve. So, what's this? Yeah. All right, well, when I get it, I'll, buy a new phone, dude. All right, so we just did abduction. It's your best abductors. So now let's do extension. So for extension, you're going to have What did I say is the nerve for the or the supraspinatus? It's the suprascapular nerve. Just making sure. Anyway, I got a little distracted, that's why. So we're doing extension. The best answer for extension of the shoulder, in my opinion, is the lats. The lats do a ton of stuff. They probably do more than anything else at the shoulder in terms of most amount of those areas. Read it. I think you need to put off the sun kills me. I got blue eyes too, and look how pale I am. I get ripped. I'm gonna get sunburned in the shade in February 1st. It's gonna be crazy. So, let's see. We're doing extension. The lats, thoracodorsal, is the nerve. Lats do a ton of stuff at the shoulder. Yeah, I know. I am. Oh. Let's see. Then you got the triceps, but here's why the triceps are kind of lame. There's really only one. The long head is your main one that's going to help extend the shoulder. So it's like when you're doing shoulder extension, you're not trying to really hit that as much anyway. So lats are a better answer. Posterior delt is a great one. Axillary. So, and the triceps, by the way, would be the radial nerve. Let's see. Extensors. Technically, the teres major with the axillary nerve. Could do that. I think axillary. Ooh, that's a good one. I think I missed that one. I'd have to check that. Guess what? Teres major is only the right answer for one question, and it's the question that deals with what is the lats little helper, and it's the teres major. So that's extension. Lats, definitely the best answer. Posterior delt, second best. So now let's do shoulder internal rotation. Boom. I only got my elbow bent so you can see it. Internal rotation, best answer because rotator cuff subscap. You should be hitting that up. Subscapularis with the upper and lower subscapular nerve if you want to sound like a genius. Let's see. You can definitely go pec major, pectoral nerve. You could also go lats. They help internally rotate, thoracodorsal nerve. But subscap, with just pure internal rotation, no horizontal AB or adduction, honestly, it's the best answer because it's a rotator cuff muscle. That's why you're going to see it on the test. So, let's see. External rotation. Boom. External rotation. You're going to have posterior delt as an option, axillary. But the infraspinatus and teres minor are your best answers because they're rotator cuff muscles. So, and the infraspinatus is the suprascapular nerve, and the teres minor is the axillary nerve. So they're a little different. And that's the shoulder. That's jamming for the shoulder. So you might as well go to the scapula. So let's go to the scapula because really they both need to move together. If I start adding in questions about the things, then you'll know what I mean. So scapula, you're going to have elevation, just going straight up, traps, your accessory nerve, also cranial nerve 11, and then you have the levator dorsal scapular nerve. Those are your two best. And then you got depression. This one's huge. Lats, best answer. You could also say rhomboids, but lats are the biggest and best. They're going to have an insertion on the inferior angle, and that's huge for questions dealing with muscles to strengthen for using assistive devices and for transfers. Lats are just huge. You should know the lats are one of the top muscles you should know everything about. That's depression. Then we have protraction. Boom, it's going forward, it was going that way. So that's your best answer, serratus anterior, long thoracic nerve, because that's always going to connect with scapular winging as a deviation. And then you got retraction where you're pulling back. Middle traps and accessory, also cranial nerve 11, same thing. And the rhomboids, which is the dorsal scapular nerve. So then you have the most important of these, because of the most complex and toughest for students, upward rotation. So when you lift your arm up, when you abduct or flex, your scapula upwardly rotates because the inferior angle goes up and out. That is scapular upward rotation. So there are three muscles that must be involved because this is an insanely important force couple. And that is the serratus anterior is protracting the scapula because as you lift your arm up, you can feel that scapula move out. So it's protracting serratus anterior, long thoracic nerve. Now, what's up with the rotation? The upper traps and where they assert on the along the top crest and the acromion and the spine of the scapula to elevate it. They're going to elevate the lateral end. That's going to help tilt the scapula inferior angle out. And this is the tough one. It's that the lower traps also. Check out the line of pull up a picture, look at the line of pull of the lower traps and see how that would upwardly rotate the scapula. Okay? So, and most people pick lower traps as a downward rotator, but it's not. Where they originate down around the spinous processes and the fascia, they come up to the top of the scapula, and when they pull, they're going to pull the medial tip down, which is going to push the inferior angle out. That's why it does upward rotation. But take a look at a picture. All right, then we have downward rotation, which is anytime the inferior angle is coming in. So think about you're hanging from a bar, monkey bar, and you pull yourself up, or a chin-up bar. That motion is downward rotation, which is super important for climbing, which makes sense when we're trying to get up in trees and down out of trees. So downward rotation is going to be the lats. Again, lats super important. The thoracodorsal nerve. So of course you could, no, yeah, don't say that. Anyway, so you got your lats, you have your rhomboids, dorsal scapular nerve, levator scap. Check at the picture. Take a look at the picture, see the line of pull, and it'll make sense. Pec minor. Those are going to be 4. I gave you 1, 2, 3, 4 awesome muscles for downward rotation, with the lats, like the strongest muscle, being a part of it. So now we have upward and downward rotation, and with its jamming, and we have the glenohumeral joint. So now we have pretty much the entire shoulder girdle with regards to controllable osteokinematic motions. So as you expand out from that, it's important to understand that the clavicle and sternum are also part of the shoulder girdle, and that the acromioclavicular joint, for example, plays an important role because the clavicle has to rotate and spin when we lift our arm up and down. So there is some motion that comes from the acromioclavicular joint and the sternoclavicular joint, so all the way to the sternum. So if you're working with a patient who has restricted motion in their shoulder, especially with abduction, and no one's looked at, maybe the clavicle movements that need to be happening, so your PT should check that out. There might be some things that need to be done in that area. Understanding how everything connects is important, but you can't understand how and why it connects if you don't know jamming first. You just literally can't have a conversation about it. So that's why you got to know all that stuff I just went over. And it's only 13 minutes in. So you could listen and study that like 6 times in an hour, dude. It's pretty sweet. And if you got a quite actual legit question, feel free to put it in the chat about the shoulder girdle. So let's see, we talked about muscles. Like I said, there's that link to that PT in the description. That'll show you some basic shoulder exercises. So, but what you should be able to do with that information I've given you, let me ask you a tricky question then. Don't think about this. True or false? Yeah, because I can post a poll. True or false? Oh my God, this is going to be crazy. True or false? This is going to rip you guys up. It's going to rip you up. So I'm going to start a poll. So I guess it's running. True or false? Yeah, there it is. True or false? During an overhead press. So start, stop. That way. Well, actually, this is the overhead press. So during an overhead press, as the patient takes the weight and moves it away from the earth, okay, away from the earth, the middle delts, innervated by the axillary nerve, are concentrically contracting to abduct or flex, but I would say abduction, abduct the glenohumeral joint. So during an overhead press, as the patient moves away from the earth, the weight away from the earth, the middle delts, innervated by the axillary nerve, are concentrically contracting to abduct the glenohumeral joint. If anything in that's false, pick false. But if nothing's false, you got to pick true. So I'll give you a second to think about that. I'll even ask it again. During an overhead press, as the patient moves the weight away from the earth, the middle delt is contracting concentrically to abduct the glenohumeral joint, and the middle delt is innervated by the axillary nerve. Answer that question. Answer it. And the answer is true. Boom. True. Nothing I said there was false. So how do I stop this? End pull. Drag it. Boom. All right. So let's get it more complicated. You're like, what? More complicated already? So that's the easiest version. Now let's do this. As the patient lowers the weight down, the scapula is downwardly rotating, and that motion is being partially controlled by the rhomboids innervated by the dorsal scapular nerve using a concentric contraction. True or false? True or false? Or let's just go, yes, that's correct. No, it's not. Yes, that's correct. No, it's not. So, I'll say it again. As the patient begins to lower the weight down towards the ground, the scapula is downwardly rotating. Is that true? It's true. That's happening. Okay. What's the next bit of information? Because it's being controlled by the rhomboids, and you're like, okay, well, if the scapula is retracting and downwardly rotating, the rhomboids do that motion, so it has to be the rhomboids. Incorrect. Because the golden rule for muscle activation during an exercise, whatever muscles are used to move the weight, this is based on gravity being the only resistance first, away from the earth. If you're moving away from the earth, concentric, that's concentric, the muscle is shortening. You're moving the body part or the weight away from the earth, you're going towards the constellations. It's concentric. And you never change the muscle on the way back down. You only change the muscle if you change the direction of the resistance, which we're not doing right now. We're just using gravity. So if I'm moving away from the earth and I'm upwardly rotating the scapula to abduct during a military press or a shoulder press or an overhead press, whatever you want to call it, then if the middle delt and all the muscles that would do that are true, you have to, based off my rule, not change the muscle. So what's happening? All the same scapular retractors are working, or scapular upward rotators, which were the serratus, upper and lower traps. They're working, but they're not concentric. They're eccentric. They're elongating. So they're concentric at the scapula as I push up, eccentric as I go down. They're elongating. They're letting out the rope, lowering it down the cliff. And if you get ripped up on that question, it means you don't understand how muscles work. And I could ask a ton of questions like that, and there's no business talking about exercise. The amount of people I see talking about exercises and they're picking the wrong muscles because they're changing muscles is terrible. It shows that we lack a basic understanding of how the human body works to move. And if you want to call yourself a professional, go ahead. You want to call yourself a student, go ahead. But if you don't know the basics, I'd say you're not a good professional and you're not learning, because we need to know the basics. To have credibility as a professional, you should know the basics, and you'll never know how good you could be if you knew the basics, if you don't know the basics, right? So learn the basics. It's never going to hurt you. And as a student, you absolutely just got to know this shit, because it's stupid not to. You're paying thousands of dollars. Why wouldn't you want to know stuff? It's crazy to me. That's a whole nother soapbox. Students who spend thousands of dollars and then don't spend. I know the education sucks, but sometimes there's bad teachers and shit, but it's like, dude, you're paying all this money. Why don't you just like try to learn something? So anyway, let's ask another of those questions. I love these questions. So, and if you're missing these, this is where you got to watch that concentric eccentric. I got tons of videos, YouTube, my campus, instructorperks.com. Check that shit out. All right, so let's stick to the overhead press. Let's see if you paid any attention. So I'll do true, false. Yes, no. Yes, everything I said is correct. No, it's not all correct, which is false. All right, so question's going to be, during an overhead press, as the patient lowers the weight to the ground, the scapula is downwardly rotating due to an eccentric contraction of the latissimus dorsi. So, as the patient is lowering the weight down, the scapula is downwardly rotating because of an eccentric contraction of the latissimus dorsi, which is the thoracodorsal nerve. So think about it. True or false? Yes is true, no is false. Let's go. These questions are just so awesome because if you're a teacher watching this is one of the best ways to diagnose where your students are missing questions. It's just, I literally figured out the algorithm to figure out what people are missing exactly. I can tell you exactly what you're missing. So remember, let's do it again. As I'm lowering the weight down, true or false? The scapula is downwardly rotating. True. I'm lowering, it's coming back down. The inferior angle is coming medially. So that's true. Now, are the lats involved in this? And this is the trick. Remember, yes, the lats downwardly rotate the scapula, but go back to my original rule. Never change the muscle. Establish the muscles moving away from the earth. Those are the ones you don't change. So to have the ability to come down, I had to get up. So what muscles helped me get up at the scapula? Upper trap, lower trap, serratus, because I upwardly rotated to move away from the earth, move the resistance away from the earth. That means it's concentric. Those are your muscles. Boom, the lats are not helping as I lower the weight down. This is also when you're developing exercises. You do these presses all day long. That does nothing to your lats or your rhomboids. I don't care what motion's occurring at the scapula. It's not, those muscles are not active to make that motion occur. Just like doing a pull down, pulling down is not going to work your serratus, really. It's not going to work your upper traps. It's going to work your rhomboids, your lats, your levator, and your pec minor. Okay? And then you're going to be like, oh, if you've been paying any attention, you're like, wait a minute, you said moving away from the earth. How's a lat pull down moving away from the earth? Because the resistance, I'm pulling down, and that's hard, versus like fighting against gravity going up normally. This is where you don't understand how the pulling machines work. In a lat row down, when you pull the bar towards your chest, what weight? Where's the weight? It's on the plates behind you. What happens to the plates as you pull down? They go up. So using a pulley system to change the direction of the force, you're pulling down, but what you're really doing is fighting gravity on the other side where those plates are, right? So again, the plates are the resistance. Which direction are they going? Boom, they're going up. Constellations, that means it's concentric, means they're shortening. Those are the muscles involved in the activity, and then you never change the muscle unless you change the direction of the force. Boom. Let's do another one for the shoulder. Pick a different exercise. Let's do a push-up. During a push-up, as the patient moves away from the earth, the serratus anterior is contracting concentrically. All right? And the nerve is going to be the long thoracic nerve. Okay? So, question is, during a push-up, as the patient moves away from the earth, the serratus anterior is contracting concentrically. And I'm not always giving you all the same insane amounts of bits of information. It's actually, I would say, people would be like, oh, shorter questions are easier. I think less. They have less information for me to look at in terms of true false. So if you don't know the answer, if you know it, if you know the facts, what I just asked is super easy. But if you don't know, there's really less chances for you to find false stuff. So you're kind of, screwed. So one more time, during a push-up, as the patient moves away from the earth, the serratus anterior is contracting concentrically. The answer is true because as you move away from the earth, the scapula is protracting and upwardly rotating. Both motions that involve the serratus anterior. And since you're moving away from the earth towards the constellations, that means it's concentric. That's the muscle established, so no matter which direction you go in a push-up, the serratus is always active. The only difference is the motion that may be occurring, and if the motion is opposite of what you learned, serratus protracts. So you're like, well, then how does it retract? It retracts by contracting eccentrically, elongating towards the earth. E. Boom. That's how you can remember that shit. If you can't do it, if you challenge me anytime, I challenge anyone to challenge me with that. If you know jamming, the only reason you miss any of these questions I'm asking you now is because you just like the test taking part, right? Like you didn't hear something I said, because it's tough to do it auditory. You can't even see what I'm saying, right? So, you didn't pay attention to the question. You made a test taking mistake, not a knowledge mistake. So that means you need to slow down, you need to read and learn tactics on how to, dissect the question. That's a whole nother thing. This is just basic information. If you know the information, if you know the jamming, you have no excuse, knowledge-wise, not to get these questions right. Well, jamming and understanding muscle contractions. So, let's see. I did the push-up. Let's do a pull-up now. During a pull-up, we'll say at the glenohumeral joint. During a pull-up, as the patient is like, I'm starting hanging, and I raise up to get my chin up to the bar. As the patient rises up to the bar, the shoulder is extending due to a concentric contraction of the latissimus dorsi, which is innervated by the thoracodorsal nerve. So, let's restate the question. The patient is doing a chin-up. As they move away from the earth towards the bar, the shoulder is extending due to a muscle contraction, due to a concentric contraction of the latissimus dorsi, which is innervated by the thoracodorsal nerve. All right, so number one, let's go through this question. Is shoulder extension occurring when I go up towards the bar for my chin? The answer is yes. You are all the way flexed and you're going into extension as you pull yourself up. So the motion is correct. All right, extension of the shoulder. Now, he's going up. Brooks was going up. He was moving his body up. The resistance is going up. That means it will be a concentric contraction. So what muscles will extend the shoulder? Lats are your best answer. You could also say long head of the triceps radial. You could say posterior delt and say axillary nerve. Those are three awesome ones. Delts are the best, but whatever. So that's true. All right, so it's concentric, it's lats, extension, all these things are true. Then we have thoracodorsal nerve. Is that correct? The answer is yes. So everything I said there was true. If you're hearing a question about a pull-up and it says anything about the scapula that's not the rhomboids, the lats, the levator, or pec minor, it's probably false, because other muscles shouldn't be really working on the scapula. So, yeah, I could do this all day. You should be able to do this all day. Write out questions like that. Write out true-false questions. If you're not writing test questions, that's weird to me. You know why that's weird? You know why it's weird to me that you wouldn't want to pretend to be a test maker? Because this channel is about physical therapy education. Right now it's kinesiology, where I was reviewing the shoulder. But yeah, it's anything physical therapy related. I'm a PTA instructor and all that stuff. So I've been in that education. I've been in the field. I'm working at a SNF right now on a travel gig, all types of stuff. It's the headquarters for all things physical therapy, rehab. Honestly, if you're an OT or CODA, this is good for you. If you're a trainer, also good for you. If you're a personal trainer, you should know the body like this. So I know a lot of students that used to be personal trainers, and they went back to school to be PTAs because one of their major goals was to improve their knowledge, which I thought was a pretty expensive way to do it. You could just go by campus instead of going back to school, and you don't have to have colleges be the gatekeeper to your information. There's tons of stuff on YouTube and stuff like that. I'm in California, dude. I'm in Sacramento. Yeah, on a travel assignment. I don't worry about diets. I'm like, whatever. So ketogenic, carnivore. You know what diet I like? The one I'm just eating. I'm eating food. I'm an omnivore. Whatever, dude. You know what I mean? So all the diets are fads and crazy. So whatever. Whatever works for you. Whatever makes you happy. Live your life. So yeah, you got to be able to do that jamming for the shoulder. Got to do it. So I think that's about it, but you can always comment and leave questions, and I'll see them later. But your objective over the next week should be able to do what I just did. Previously, it had taken me 10 or 13 minutes to run through jamming. All right. So, hey, take care. If you want, to, like I said earlier, I mean, subscribe to this channel. I'll do this more often, but I got tons of videos. I mean, I'm all about helping PTAs, anyone in healthcare, learn more about the body. You can also go to instructorbrooks.com. If you're trying to take the boards, you want to pass, you want to improve your chances, you want to get my battle plan. It's going to walk you through step by step on the things you just got to know, kind of like what I just did today. So I got all types of stuff. So, check it out. Let's make, physical therapy and physical therapy education totally awesome and way more fun. So catch you later. Good luck on the shoulder. Peace out.